I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Poddango. Too many podcasts, not enough time? Let the station directors at Poddango sift through the mountains of podcasts to bring you the very best. Check out poddango.com. Joining us today on The Culture Catch, the very talented actress Laura Dern, and also producer of the new David Lynch movie, co-producer. Laura, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Tell me about your very first encounter with David. Do you remember?
The first words he ever said to me was, "I've got to take a leak." That's my first memory of David Lynch. I was 17 and in an office going to meet him for Blue Velvet. And he came out of the office and said that to me, went to the bathroom, came back in, and we met for about a half an hour and talked about everything but movies. And we had like a half an hour discussion about different types of trees, meditation, living in Los Angeles. We discovered that we both lived, and I kind of grew up in an apartment very near his apartment all through the Eraserhead years.
Right.
Within about a block of each other. So we had all these wonderful talks and never talked about movies or his movie or anything I'd ever done, which was very refreshing and a very odd and wonderful way to meet a director. And then we met the second time at Bob's Big Boy, myself, David, and Kyle MacLachlan, and then he asked me to be in Blue Velvet. So that was my introduction. But most directors ask you to like audition or talk to you about your work or
And do a scene or something?
Yeah. It was highly exciting at 17 to have that first experience.
Now, at 17, were you really aware of his artistry then, or were you kind of going into it going like, Eraserhead and Dune was certainly not getting great reviews. Oh, Elephant Man was
preceding that.
So that got huge reviews and all kinds of awards.
I was oddly extremely aware, which at 17 you wouldn't think necessarily, but I was raised by actors who really supported and admired nonconformism.
Right.
So in my household, Eraserhead and Elephant Man were already a well-known and much admired pieces of work. And when I read the script, I thought it was brilliant and terrifying and hilarious. And my agent and I stopped working together. Another little
really?
story, because this agent didn't at all understand
this is not a good career move for you.
And I had been offered at the same time a very important seeming part opposite a very important seeming brat packer to be in a very important brat pack important movie.
Which probably would have...
I wanted to do Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
So Blue Velvet was a big turning point, exciting time for me to sort of define what I wanted to do and the kinds of people I wanted to work with. And little did I know that I was, the luckiest person in the world to be given the opportunity. But it forced my hand a little bit to make some, big decisions for a teenager.
And then you ultimately end up in Wilde at Heart.
Yeah.
Which was just another feather in your actress's cap, chapeau.
More than anything, the fact that David would feel supportive of, he's just the most supportive person of actors in general, but supportive of one actor to have them play so many different types of characters is just an extraordinary, obviously an extraordinary gift to me, but also says so much for David that he has faith in actors on that level.
Right.
He would never stereotype someone. And, the fact that he's given me these opportunities that kind of run the gamut is very, very lucky.
And then 13 years later, David again in Inland Empire, but a completely different Hollywood experience now because this is guerrilla filmmaking.
Totally.
It's not, people need to know that this movie was shot on PD-150s, the same kind of gear we're using here for this interview, and Justin and I talked about a little bit, audiences are a lot more forgiving, I guess, Laura, now. They've grown up with the internet. They don't, I guess, have to have the 35 wide spectacle for a movie to impact them emotionally.
Yeah.
They maybe don't feel that that's necessary to impact a narrative. How did you get into this project, this new one? Did he call you? Did you run into him at Bob's?
He called me to say he wanted to experiment. And that's just what we did for 3.5 years. But at the time, I didn't know it was going to be quite that. I knew that he was going to write a monologue and he wanted to shoot it. And that sort of was our starting point. And we went scene by scene. And once we had a collection of scenes, and I think it clicked in David's head when he saw sort of the entire movie, then we continued to work scene by scene because he was basically writing the screenplay as we continued shooting. And that was what made this process different. The script was in his head, but what we knew was sort of each day's work at hand.
And as you were going along through this, I mean, it's a long time period. You're obviously working on other projects. You're coming back to it. Was it difficult for you because your role is so, I mean, I know David championed your cause. Let's consider you for an Academy Award nomination with his cow stunt.
Right.
Did you have a feeling that this was really one of those career-defining moments as an actress?
I don't know.
Or do you ever know that?
Yeah.
I mean, is that a fair question even?
I don't know. It's totally a fair question, but I don't think you ever do because you never know what's going to happen with it. But particularly on this movie because of the experimental feeling of it, and David really following his own intuitive process as an artist, which is what I love about him because he does actually listen to his own voice and he actually is a nonconformist in this terrifying American stigma we're in right now, thanks to the cultural, political state we're in right now. So just to be around the energy of nonconformism is so refreshing. And he, takes you on that ride, and you kind of don't know, is it going to end up on his website? Is this going to become a painting? Is he going to make a movie out of it? Which is liberating, too, because you're just there to take risks and try stuff. And, after about 1.5 years, certainly, I don't want to sound like some, egoless, just creative being who just floats wherever David goes. Sure, the ego kicks in. I'm like, okay, I've been doing this 1.5 years. I never had a makeup person. I never had hair. There ain't no lighting.
Right.
Half the time it's me and David alone. There's not much of a crew. I've seen a couple actors every once in a while. And we're throwing it out there.
Right.
And you start to go, wow, somebody might see this one day. And it's a little intimidating because it was certainly a raw experience. And it's what you dream of doing. And it's also what can scare someone like me.
Well, you get to a point in your career where you think, okay, in your youth, maybe that's how you made movies, but
yeah.
I've got a family, I've got other people calling on me, I've got another life. Let's conclude this, or let's have a point at the end of the tunnel where we know we're going to come out at the other end.
Yeah, and time didn't scare me as much as the risk of the unknown. That I was asked to be the rawest of different kinds of self, myself, other selves, other characters. We were never shooting in sequence, obviously,
right.
And we didn't have a script. And so at some point it kicks in that it is becoming a movie, and there's going to be an end result, and you don't know how your performance will ultimately come together. And if you've done the job you would hope you would have done when you see the finished result. And so it's liberating and highly intimidating at the same time.
Sure, good answer. When you finally saw yourself there in that final cut, what did you think?
It was much less different than I expected. I thought I would be more shocked, and I thought there would be more surprises, and I actually got a lot of what I expected, and I realized that David was much more succinct in his describing, even in vagaries, mm-hmm. even in a catchphrase or presenting a mood. He was describing the film to me. And that was a lot of fun to witness.
Just baiting you and still letting you conjure up your own imagery.
Absolutely.